to my special session, okay? And in this special session, I'm going to go over, I want to talk about all the seasonings that I have in my cabinet. I have 2 shelves worth of seasonings, so this right here is my bottom shelf. And then I'm gonna go ahead and transition once I'm done with these to my top shelf. I wanted to go ahead and talk about all the seasonings here that I use, just because, you know, I have meal prep sessions on my YouTube channel. And for those of y'all out there that might be wondering like what seasonings you know to use and things like that, what seasonings are healthier and whatnot, maybe you have a little bit of a roadblock on what to use and things like that. Wanted to go ahead and see if I can help y'all out a little bit, help you further along. I'm gonna go from, of course, it's gonna be my right to left, but left to right for y'all. What are probably my favorite seasonings to use, okay? And just so you know, these two, the Dash and the Kinders, they're about neck and neck as far as my favorite seasonings go. So I wanna start with the Dash though. I have Table Blend and then I have the Lemon Pepper. Now the Table Blend, one of my favorite ones to use. See, the Table Blend and pretty much most Dashes with the exception of this one and the other smaller ones I'm gonna bring out, which is the taco and the chicken seasoning, they're a little different in the ingredients. But for the most part, most Dashes have the same ingredients in them. You know, you're looking at a little bit of like Italian seasonings that they use, and Dash even has an Italian seasoning brand, right? They have a Dash Italian seasoning, but for the most part, all the Dashes have like oregano, basil, you know, cumin, coriander, some cayenne pepper in there, and maybe even some parsley, bay marjoram, rosemary. So, you know, it's a lot of the things that you get in an Italian seasoning anyway. But I love using Table Blend. You know, I'll mix that like with pretty much anything. Usually these two I use in conjunction with each other. As a matter of fact, just this week I made Pacific cod for meal prep. And so with Pacific cod, I went ahead and used these two. Some of the best seasonings that you can use. The lemon pepper also, you know, is pretty good. Like these two, what I like about them is, you know, they're not too spicy. And what I also like about Dash is you get everything except the salt, which actually is good for someone like myself because, you know, genetically I do face hypertension, which oftentimes results as high sodium, right? That's what that results from. So it gives me a little bit of peace of mind, right? It puts me at ease knowing that if I want to put salt on my foods, I can do that myself. Dash Ultimate Garlic. I mean, it's like probably the strongest garlic you can think of. If you look at the ingredients, you know, it's got dried garlic, dried roasted garlic, dried onion, dried green onion, rice hulls, and parsley and some other natural flavors. So it's pretty much got everything that you can think of to make up an ultimate garlic seasoning, like a much more enhanced type of flavoring for garlic. And usually when I use this, I won't use that. It's just, for me, no point in using, you know, this if I'm already using that. These are probably my next favorite. These are gonna be Kinders. This one here is all-purpose, right? And I forgot to mention with the Dashes, another reason I like them so much is because they're all-purpose. So you can use Dashes as well as some Kinders, not all of them, these two, but there's other Kinder seasonings that aren't really all-purpose. But I try to go for the all-purpose seasonings because those are the ones that I, you know, can use for just about anything. So like with the Dashes, I can use that for meats, I can use that for seafood, and I can use that for veggies, okay? You know, you can use it to enhance flavor with any type of dish, right? It works well with anything. All-purpose is pretty much self-explanatory. Now, the all-purpose, this one, you know, has a little bit of sweetness to it. And the reason why is because in the ingredients, besides the salt and dehydrated garlic and other spices, there's actually cane sugar in here in the ingredients, okay? So that cane sugar is what gives this, you know, when you use this on your food, you get a little bit of a sweetness to it. And the same thing actually applies to this as well. This is the cowboy butter. You know, you got the butter, you got garlic, and, you know, just some garlic in here in the ingredients, right? But then it's Dijon butter and chili. Now this one, I just actually started using this one, and you can, if you have a Costco membership, that's where you can get this. You know, this one here came from Kroger, and unfortunately they don't sell a bigger size. I really wish they did. But I actually, believe it or not, just picked up a 21 ounce off of eBay, so that's gonna be my refill. I'll just use that big one to refill this. You can use these also, just like this one, This one has gives a sweet flavor, right? It enhances the sweetness of whatever you're cooking. And also too, I don't know if you can see it, right? I'm gonna try as best I can to show you, but right here, right? On the back of your Conda seasonings, whichever Condas you pick up, it'll usually give you like a little diagram here where my fingers are. On this one, there's a pig, a cow, a chicken, and then a piece of broccoli, which basically tells you that you can use this for veggies, meats, right? Like chicken. You can use it for steak, and you can use it for pork. Same with this one. This one has everything. It's got the same as this. It's got a pig, it's got a cow, and it's got, chicken, and of course it's got broccoli too. Now obviously the only thing this doesn't have is seafood, but don't let that fool you. If you eat seafood, you can use this for seafood as well. Doesn't have to have it on there. After all, this is all purpose. And I mean, so is this one really too. But if you want something with sweetness, right, use this. Now these do have, while the Dashes is known for not having the salt, it has every spice except salt in it, this does have sodium. This one's got 180 milligrams per serving. This one's 210 per serving milligrams. Now, that's not bad. Serving size is a quarter of a teaspoon. So that's still not bad. There's other factors that come into play when you're consuming, spices. So, your adequate intake for most people is about 1,500 milligrams for sodium, but you also have an upper limit, a maximum limit of 2,300 milligrams. Once you start surpassing that, then you kind of will have to worry about certain issues, hypertension being one of them. These do have a little bit of sodium in it, but not really enough to break you. Man, let me tell you something. This one, it's good, don't get me wrong, but I personally feel like the type of people, and I'm not saying people from up north like myself can not handle these, but typically I think people from the South, especially the deep South, can handle blackened seasoning better. So what I have here is Cajun's Choice Premium Blend Blackened Seasoning. It's pretty good for most things, right? You can use it as it's a seasoning and rub. So you can use it on meats, you can use it on, you can even use it on veggies. Right on this picture is some asparagus. And I have used this on asparagus before. I've used it on broccoli as well. I've used it on seafood. I've used it on chicken. It's good. You just want to be mindful of how much, I have to be mindful of how much I pour. You can go crazy if you can handle it. It's perfectly fine. I'll tell you a story. I was at the Yard House one night, right? Normally I go every Friday. And so it was one Friday night I went, and I decided to try something different, something other than my usual meal. And what I decided to get was some Cajun shrimp. I think it was a Cajun shrimp bowl. And let me tell you, I ate it, but I had to eat it very, very slowly. Reason being is because for me, I don't really like spicy foods like that anyway. It was Cajun for real. You know what I'm saying? I can't tell you how many refills of water I had to get, because I was not sparing any water that was given to me by the waitresses. It was something. It was definitely something. But I mean, it is a good seasoning to have though. Like if I feel like I've even used this on certain vegan plant-based foods. Tofu, I've used it on tempeh. Okay. I mean it's pretty good. It's not a bad seasoning at all. You'll definitely feel the kick, right? You'll feel it when you go to consume it. But it's not bad if you're looking for something to, something new, right? You want to blacken your foods up. Next I have parsley. This is more of a garnish, and it's one of my favorite garnishes I love to use. Can't go wrong with parsley. See, whenever I make eggs in the morning, when I make my egg whites, when I scramble them, and I'll add in my Morningstar veggie crumbles or my Morningstar sausage patties, whichever I choose, normally I go ahead and add the parsley as a garnish once I'm done. Okay, so the parsley just gives it the extra flavor. It's a great garnish, always has been. It's your ideal herb for garnishes. As a matter of fact, last week, right, as of this video, the week before, I had made a tofu bowl, and before I closed up the containers and put them in the fridge, I ended up adding parsley, as a nice garnish. It tasted really good. Now the last thing I have here from my bottom shelf, actually there's two more things. The garlic is pretty much self-explanatory. This is granulated garlic or garlic powder, same thing. This particular brand here is Kirkland Signature, so if you have a Costco membership, that's where it comes from, you already know. But this is a Costco brand garlic powder. Now, I use this pretty much for everything. Like I said, unless I'm using this right here is the first go-to. I'm using this for everything, and I mean like my Morningstar crumbles, the veggie crumbles, or the veggie sausage patties. If I'm cooking steak, if I'm cooking chicken, if I'm cooking tofu, tempeh, and I can saute vegetables and put them in the cast iron skillet on the stove. Anything garlic, and see, I love garlic foods. I try to be mindful though, because it can, essentially make you smell like garlic. Like, if you eat too much, when you sweat, like it comes out in your pores. So you do want to be careful. It's not really going to hurt you, but you do want to be careful about it coming out your pores or even your breath smelling like garlic. You do want to be mindful if you're self-conscious about stuff like that. Last but not least, for my bottom shelf, I gotta show y'all the dark brown sugar. Now, I just recently started doing this pretty much for, I'll say, certain veggies and even certain entrees. Just this week, I made Pacific cod, right? And aside from these two, I went ahead and decided to use some brown sugar and just kind of sprinkled it over the cod before I oven baked it. Brown sugar gives you a sweetness like you wouldn't believe. But it's brown sugar after all. I use this on some vegetables and some entrees. Matter of fact, I used this whenever I made so last week when I made the tofu, right? I sauteed some tofu with teriyaki sauce. I used sesame oil, which is the oil that a lot of Japanese steakhouses use. And then I combined that with my seasonings of choice. I think I used these two and then these two. And then some of this as well. And of course I added some oil, some olive oil, and just whisked it around, and I made my own sauce to spread over the tofu. I do it with tempeh as well, helps with flavor. And you can also do it with like chicken or, with steak. I haven't yet, but I definitely will. I wanted to do it with tofu and tempeh because, those foods, while good for you, they're an acquired taste. Even my first time making tofu, I kind of botched it, so I had to throw it away. And I ended up, I think, making chicken instead. It was bad. But then once I, did some research on how to cook it, where I went wrong the first time and, what to improve, it got a lot better progressively. It's all about how you season it. Seasonings they're a lifesaver. So that's the end of my bottom shelf. Let me go ahead and show y'all my second. Oh, all right, y'all, I'm back. Almost knocked over all my stuff. But now, here's my second shelf stuff. As you can see, I wasn't lying about the dash. So you saw the lemon pepper, the ultimate garlic, and the table blend. Here's the next four. I love dash, because like I said, for me, I do gotta be mindful about sodium intake. So the original, right, which is one of the first seasonings that ever made it home to my shelf, right? Ever made it home to my pantry, my cabinets or whatever. Can't go wrong with the original, all right? The original has pretty much everything that I mentioned in the table blend, as well as the lemon pepper, right? Some of your Italian spices, bay marjoram, oregano, rosemary, cumin, coriander, some cayenne pepper. It's got a lot of the things and some dried onion, of course, too, black pepper even. Everything but the salt, pretty much. So, you get a little bit of a tang here with this. Same with the garlic and herb. Now, it's pretty much, imagine everything except, there's a little extra take on garlic in here, right? So you got garlic and then some other herbs. Some of the herbs in here sort of mimic other Italian seasonings. So take that for how you will. But it's one of my favorite seasonings too. Actually, this was the second one outside of that to make it to my cabinet. So, I actually grew up on dash garlic and herb. I don't know if y'all remember, maybe some of y'all are too young, or if y'all are around my age or older, you definitely remember when it was Mrs. Dash, right? Remember when these was Mrs., especially the original. Remember when it was Mrs. Dash? It come a long way though. They still make, good seasonings. And I guess that sort of leads me to segue into the next Dash seasonings that you see. One being taco seasoning, the other being chicken. So the taco seasoning, I typically use that for chopped meat, if I'm gonna, because it does taste just like taco seasoning. So I use that for chopped meat, or if I'm making crumbles. So good. And they also have Morningstar chorizo crumbles, which so far I believe they can only be found at Wegmans. But if they found anywhere else, I'm not sure. But Wegmans has the chorizo crumbles. They're kind of already seasoned with, I don't know with what, but they already taste kind of like, like tacos. So, it's either way though. If I'm buying like chopped meat, I'll use this here just to sort of mimic the taco feel. Even if I'm making chopped meat to essentially combine it in a bowl, even if I'm not even really making tacos, I still use this anyway. Now you have chicken, right? So the Dash chicken seasoning is, it's pretty self-explanatory, but don't get it twisted. You could also use that for steak too. You can even use it for seafood. It's all up to you. Like Dash, with the exception of the taco seasoning, I'll say, most Dash seasonings are pretty much all-purpose. You can use them on just about anything, meats and veggies. The chicken seasoning, I'm not sure if I'd use that on veggies, but I would definitely use it on other types of proteins, right? Other seafoods, other meats. I would definitely do that, and I have. This definitely tastes like, like a chicken seasoning. If you're familiar with like the McCormick's chicken seasoning or like the McCormick's steak blend brand, you'll get a little bit of a little remnant. Next thing, common, right? Very common in what's in most people's kitchens, if not all, salt and pepper. Now these are grinders up here, and so are these back here. This is actually what I use. So these make things so much easier. They're, electric. So, you just press a button and then they just grind out, right? Now, the good thing about this is when you just pour table salt, it's easy for you to overconsume, because usually the serving size, I want to say, is about 1/4 of a teaspoon. Now, with this helps you sort of alleviate the serving sizes a little bit, because you have the option to, with this lever down here, you have the option to turn it to where you want to have it grounded out coarse or grounded out fine. Now, however you have it grounded out is going to affect the serving size. It'll offset a little bit. So the serving size isn't created equal in a grinder. That's why, it's best to use grinders as opposed to using table salt. Now, the next thing I have here, and I actually sort of grouped all these together, these next batches of stuff here, I have the onion, right? Then I have cayenne pepper. I have, this should be curry powder, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, curry powder. And then some coriander, and that should be cumin. Back here, I got ground turmeric. So the reason why I wanted to put all these together is because these all get used typically for one thing in my household. What that gets used for is my lentil curry recipes, and sometimes even the black bean curry recipes if I decide to make black beans instead of lentils in a curry form. The curries I make, and I have a recipe video for it on my meal prep session on my YouTube, but all of these, essentially the recipe calls for all of this in there. Some of these, like the ground turmeric and the cayenne pepper, a lot of these have anti-inflammatory properties, as well as even some antioxidant properties, which help rid your body of free radicals. The funny story here, my doctor, he he actually takes ground turmeric and he'll like just sort of, rub it like in his teeth or whatever. He'll actually just kind of essentially chew on ground turmeric. He talks about how his dentist gets mad at him, and the reason being is because with ground turmeric, as you can imagine, you see the color, when you put it in your mouth, it stains your teeth. So, like I said, while ground turmeric is good, while it has anti-inflammatory properties and all that, if you want to take turmeric, there's supplements out there for that. This is definitely all the seasonings I got, but actually there's something else I did want to show you. I wanted to make sure I brought these out. So what we have here is the oils that I like to use, right? So for those of you out there that are looking at like trying to cook with something other than butter and margarine and stuff like that, definitely look into oils. Specifically, right, this one is avocado oil. This one here is olive oil, and this right here is canola oil, all right? So the good thing about all three of these, and even mazola oil, like mazola corn oil, it's pretty good too. The mazola is a little similar to canola oil in a sense, but What's good about these three specifically is that it has what's called mono and polyunsaturated fats in them. See, now when you use butter or margarine, butter at one point was a liquid and then a hydrogen molecule got added to it to make it a saturated fat. So it was unsaturated at one point and then became saturated. That's the problem with butter and margarine. That's why it's high, and it tends to be high in saturated and even trans fat content. These, however, okay, mono and polyunsaturated fats, those are the type of unsaturated fats your body needs in order to, especially if you're like me and you deal with high cholesterol. These right here will help, lower your LDL, low density lipoproteins, which is your bad cholesterol, and raise your HDL, your high density lipoproteins, otherwise known as the good cholesterol. So you see what happens with, consuming a lot of, like, cooking with butter and things like that. If you're doing it every now and again, it's not bad for you. I'm not going, everything in moderation is what I always say. But over time though, overconsumption will lead you to, having the fatty acids in your body will eventually convert over to plaque. That plaque then latches itself onto your artery walls, and they get so big, they thicken, right, up against your artery walls. They thicken so much, they harden, and they end up narrowing the pathway for blood to travel through those arteries. And if that happens enough, no blood flow, right? So you end up with a heart attack. So these, I like these right here because these are real good about that. Monounsaturated fats gives you omega-3s, right? Which also help with that. Omega-3s is also good in, it has inflammatory properties too, or anti-inflammatory properties. And overall, they're just better to cook with, right? All of these oils pretty much have they have a high smoke point. So if you're cooking something in the like a cast iron skillet or just a regular frying pan, a non-stick, or even if you oven bake something and you're using cooking trays or what have you, these have high smoke points. So you do want to be careful about the temperature you use to cook these. Whether on the stove top or in the oven. You don't want to cook nothing too high because, you can literally burn whatever food is in your pan or on that cooking tray in the oven. I remember seeing a video of a girl who I think tried to cook steak. She was in her house and she had her stove on so high and she used so much oil and, the steak just started smoking. And the grease, came jumping out at her and she burned herself. Then a fire started and the smoke detector started going off. She's yelling help. I don't know if any of y'all seen that video, but there was a lot wrong there. But it's okay though, that's where people like me come in, for those that don't know how to cook very well or are getting started, that's where I come in, And for those of y'all that are looking for what seasonings to use for your foods, hopefully this helps you out right here. I use a wealth of seasonings. I always make sure I season my food. It's funny because, we tend to make fun of a certain community for not seasoning their foods. So, but that's okay though, because, this right here will help y'all out if you belong to said community and you're not one for seasoning your food. This right here will do the trick. So that's going to be the end of this special session. I appreciate y'all for tuning in. This has really been fun. I'm going to do a lot more of these special sessions here because this, gets us away from the whiteboard and, just kind of has us go over, something different. You know what I'm saying? So I definitely want to do a lot more of that. But I appreciate y'all for tuning in. If you liked it, of course, always give it a thumbs up, and then subscribe if you feel inclined, comment, maybe what's your favorite seasonings to use. I'd love to know. But, I appreciate y'all for tuning in again, and I'll see y'all on the next one. Y'all take care. Have yourselves a great day.